But before we get into it, I'm going to talk a little bit today about some superstitions. But the goal of the lesson, I'll go ahead and tell you guys, is that we ought to do the best that we can with what we've been given, right? And when people are new, they might not know all the right things, and so we do the best that we can to encourage them as they're learning and growing. So let me start off by giving you guys a couple of things. As you guys are creating your little names, I thought it would be fun if you put the year of your birth on there as well. Because I'm curious if older folks would know a little bit more about superstition than younger folks. And so, yeah, as you're doing that, if you've already made your name and you can't change it, whatever, I don't care. But if you can change it, put the year of your birth on there. I love that. Okay, so while you guys are doing that, let me show you a few things first, because you guys need to see this before we do the quiz. The Cahoots quiz, it's going to be a short quiz, but I want to explain what those things look like so that you guys have a good guess at what that is going to end up being, okay? So I had a rice bowl and chopsticks on my kitchen counter, but I left in such a hurry, I forgot it. I didn't even change out of my work clothes or anything like that. And so, but imagine this being a rice bowl and these being chopsticks. You guys can see that, right? And so Asians, the way that we eat is that everyone has a small, it's a little tiny bowl like this. It's a personal bowl. You put rice in it, and there's always plates of food in front of you, and everyone shares in that plate of food. Like that's what we call Asian style, you know. And so you sit here with your bowl of rice, and then you take your chopsticks and you pick food and you put it in your plate and you eat. There's some etiquette around it. Like you always let the old people go first. Like I remember when I was a kid, my mom would start the meal with picking up food and putting it on my dad's plate, and then or his bowl, and then he would take the first bite, and then we would all eat after that, because you're supposed to respect your elders and things. And so when you do pick up food, when you want to show affection to other people, you pick up the food and then you put it on their plate as a, hey, I picked out the best piece and I want to give it to you. And so you do that, and they're like, aw, and so they eat it, and it's really nice, and they're thank you. What you don't want to do is you don't want to pick up food and then try to give it to them so that they would pick it up with their chopsticks, okay? So one of the questions is going to be, why not? Okay, so why don't you pick up the chopsticks and give it to somebody, and then they pick it with their chopsticks? You always pick it up and you put it in the bowl. Another no-no is that you never take your chopsticks and hit the side of the bowl, okay? That's just a no-no. And then the third one that you'll need for this quiz is that, if you have a bowl of rice and you're trying to go from one place to another, the temptation is you want to have free hands, so you take your chopsticks and you stick it right in the rice, and it'll sit like this, and then you'll go and you'll do whatever it is, and so you have, one extra hand, right? This is a no-no. Do I do it? All the time. But the question is going to be, why is this a no-no? So you guys sign in and ready to go? Okay. If you're not, it's okay. You can still kind of follow along and kind of get pronator who. Another part of the quiz, it's going to be about a familiar Bible story. So you're going to have a couple of questions concerning superstition around Asian food, but then all of a sudden it's going to switch, and it's going to be some Bible questions in there, okay? So maybe you'll be able to catch back up once we get into the Bible questions. They're not supposed to be tricky, and they're not supposed to be hard, but make sure you read them before you just kind of push the buttons. You guys ready? I'm ready. Okay. Is it supposed to be in Spanish? Oh, no. Did I change the language setting? Oh, no. What? It's fine. Okay, you guys ready? Okay, here we go. Superstition. You guys ready? I'll read it out loud too. You don't pass food chopstick to chopstick because it means you'll get germs, you'll get married, you'll have babies, you'll have conflict. Why don't you pass chopsticks to chopsticks? You always put it on their plate, remember? Okay, good job, guys. For you germaphobes, that is a true statement, but that's not the reason why it's a no-no. And you'll get married? I mean, that's happened before, I guess. It's impossible to have babies. Okay. Okay, look at this. We got first blood. The 06s, guys, the 2000 people are beating us. Y'all get it together. Okay, here we go. Next question. You don't stick chopsticks in your rice bowl because it looks bad, it's bad luck, it's disrespectful, or it summons evil spirits. Technically, yes, but one's more specific than the other one. And anyway, you don't stick chopsticks in your rice bowl. It's bad luck. It's bad luck. And we'll talk about these. Actually, is it pausing? Can I talk right now? Oh, I thought I had to come back to, here I am. I'm not a Cahoots master. Let's go back to that first question. When you take chopsticks and you give it to somebody else and they pick up the chopsticks, it symbolizes the idea that you might have conflict with that person because of the way your chopsticks are attacking each other. I guess it's just superstition. But the reason why you don't stick chopsticks to chopsticks isn't so much the germ thing, it's you'll have conflict with that person. And so Asian people, they're very superstitious, and they would say, don't do that. When you pick it up, do not hand it to them so that they can pick it up, okay? One more thing. Speaking of handing things to people, you'll notice that if you go to a really traditional Chinese restaurant, when they give you the check, they always give it to you with two hands. If it's an Asian person, if it's a white guy or a girl or a waitress or whatever, they're going, here's your check, But an Asian person will give it to you with two hands like this. And you'll notice if you go to an Asian grocery store and they give you your change, they give you your change with two hands as well. We'll talk about why that is. But the reason why that signals conflict is it's just a superstition. Here, you don't stick your chopstick in your rice bowl because when you do, this looks like, and you guys, you seen those little altars in front of Chinese restaurants or the nail salons or something like that? It's a little urn like this, and it's got rice in it, and it's got incense in it. Well, this reminds them of death ceremonies and things like that, and so it's bad luck for you to stick your rice in here because it looks like death, and you don't want anything to look like death in your life because that's going to bring you bad luck. Is it true? It's not. I stick chopsticks in my rice all the time, and all I'm missing is a pinky, and so I think we're doing pretty good. Okay, let's go to the next one. Yeah, 72 represent. I love it. I don't know who Maddie Doves is, but your mom 2011. You guys need to come up with better names than that. All right, here we go. You don't hit your rice bowl because it sounds bad, it's bad luck, it's disrespectful, it summons evil spirits. I like all this murmuring. So, good job. Wow, a lot of you guys got this one. That's exactly right. When you do this, you're summoning evil spirits. And nobody wants evil spirits to come and sit at your table. In fact, what's interesting is if I'm serving a bunch of rice bowls for people, we always have the exact number of people sitting at the table, which just makes sense, right? But if you had an extra bowl of rice, that is a big no-no. Because when you have an extra bowl of rice, what you're doing is you're inviting spirits to come sit at the table and eat with you. And that didn't really make sense to me until I went to Vietnam back in, I think, 2020. And when I was there, was it 2020 or was it 20? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was a couple of years ago. I was there, and I was eating dinner with my family. One of my aunts had cooked this dinner, and my mom was also visiting Vietnam at the same time. And I was going to sit next to my mom because she was sitting here, and her aunt, or one of my aunts was sitting next to her, and there was an empty seat. And I was like, well, I'll go sit with my mom because kids like to sit next to their parents. And I'm about to sit down. She goes, oh, no, you don't sit there. But she said it in Vietnamese. So I was like, okay. So I sit next to that chair. I'm eating, and there's this empty chair beside us, and turns out she was saving that chair for my dad, who had died when I was 14, 15 years old. And she was expecting his spirit to be there to eat with us. And I thought that was the wildest thing, because everyone around us was like super normal. And I'm like, that rice is getting cold. So don't hit your rice bowl if you're eating at my mom's house. If you eat at my house and you hit your rice bowl, I'll probably tell you to knock it off too, because it sounds bad. But it summons evil spirits. Okay, let's see. Man, keep it up, kids. Keep it up, Corby. Way to go, buddy. You don't pass things without using two hands because it tastes bad, it's bad luck, it's disrespectful, and it summons evil spirits. Or it summons evil spirits. Yeah, that was an easy one. It's just disrespectful. There's no superstition about it. You always want to be in a position where you show yourself to be inferior to the person you want to respect and honor, you know? And so by having both hands, you're signifying there's no weapons, there's nothing. You're an inferior person giving something to a more superior person. And so it's a huge sign of respect. Okay, now we're going to switch over to some Bible questions, okay? This is all going to relate, trust me. Way to go, Casina, highest climber. You need the Taylor T 90-degree climbing class. That's what you need. All right, here we go. What was the name of the Syrian leper, captain of the army of the king of Aram, found in 2 Kings chapter 5? Haman, Naaman, Blaman, or Earl? These are all real names. I'm just kidding, one of them is not. Earl. Okay, it was Naaman. It was Naaman. And we're going to talk about him a little bit today. Not gonna go on too much about that. Matty Dubs, way to go, buddy. Or dudette, I don't know who you are. After he was cleansed, what did Naaman ask for from Elisha? The Holy Spirit, 10 changes of clothes, 2 mules' load of earth, a partridge in a pear tree. This is a tough one. It was 2 mule loads of earth. So what he was going to offer Elisha was 10 changes of clothes and a bunch of silver and some gold in there. That's what he was going to give him. But as he was leaving, he asked for 2 mule loads of earth. And we'll talk about why that's significant. Last question. You guys ready? Hefe. Come on, man. You got to pull it out. Sunshine 78. That was a good year. Okay. Here we go. Last one. Which god did Naaman's king worship? Was it Rimmon, Baal, Ishtar, or Gehazi? I'll give you a hint. He was from Aram, right? Yeah, he was an Aramite, Aramean. That was a hard one, but okay. So let's see who the winner is. Matty Dubs, good job. Then we got Sunshine 78. That's a good year. Who pulled it out? Let's see. Corby. Amazing. Some notables up there. Okay. And then, all you jokers. Okay. Anyway, that's enough of that. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect my computer. So if you want to pull up whatever the normal thing is, that'd be good. Your Bible's open to 1 Kings chapter 20, please. 1 Kings chapter 20. So we're going here first because of some context. So in 1 Kings chapter 20, we have King Ahab, right? Is it King Ahab? I think it is King Ahab. Let me ask you guys, is King Ahab, was he a good king or was he a bad king? He was a terrible guy, okay? He was a terrible guy. I think this is the same guy that his wife's name was Jezebel. Yeah? And just an awful, awful person, okay? So the king of Aram comes and he wants to take King Ahab's stuff. So he says, hey, I'm going to send an envoy, and when I get there, I want your wives, I want your kids, I want all the gold I can carry. And Ahab says, okay. And so he sends his messengers, and when the messengers get there, they say, yeah, well, we're going to take your wives, your sons, and all the gold that we can carry, but we also want to take anything that pleases us. And Ahab's like, whoa, 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 that's too much. Look, when you asked for my wives and my sons and my gold, I said, okay, but I cannot allow you to do that you can just take whatever you want. And so they get in a big battle. The king of Aram has 32 kings. He's going to bring this entire army, and they're going to fight them. And Ahab is a little scared because, he was just going to give him stuff because, of course, he was going to lose it anyway. But now he's a little worried. The Lord says, hey, don't worry. Go into battle and get up all the princes and let them lead the fight, and you'll win. And Ahab says, well, who's going to lead the charge? And God said, you are. So Ahab, in faith, puts on all of his stuff. They go out to battle. Guess who wins? Ahab. He did, because the Lord said that he would win if he went out and lead the battle. But a couple of things I wanted to point out is, first of all, in verse 7, the king of Israel, Ahab, called all the elders of the land and said, please observe and see how this man is looking for trouble. He wasn't looking for trouble when he asked for his wives and sons and all of his gold, but now that he's asking this one thing, he's just looking for trouble. I thought that was interesting because of the phrase, looking for trouble. Going to go and pick a fight, looking for trouble. And so that's not a good thing. Verse 11 was also notable to me because it says, then the king of Israel replied, tell him, let not him who girds on his armor boast like him who takes it off. And anytime that there's smack talk in the Bible, I always underline it because it's like, all right, I want to speak where the Bible speaks. And so, when I'm pickleballing it, I would say things like, let not him who zips up his little pickleball pouch laugh like the one who is still holding on to it because he didn't get out. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. Something like that. So, the king of Aram loses, and he goes back and he's like, man, how do we lose that? So, something about ancient history, the way that the armies fought is, we know today it's better weapons, better tactics, better leadership. That's how you win battles, right? Because you outmaneuver or outperform. You don't have to have numbers to win, but you can look at certain things and go, okay, this is not going to go well, or this is going to go well. Back then, though, they had this picture that whoever's God is the strongest is going to win. And so that's how sometimes you can see an underdog country or nation or nationality beat a bigger army because their God is stronger, right? Isn't that what happened when Moses led his people out of Egypt? And as they were going along, what happened to all the nations around him? They trembled in fear. They heard the rumors. And what was the rumor? Was Moses like such a great leader, an army military mind? It was because what? Because the God of Israel is greater than the gods of Egypt, and how he humbled all of them. You guys see what I'm saying here? So these Arameans, they go home, they're like, man, look in verse 23. Okay? Now the servants of the king of Aram said to him, their gods are gods of the mountains. Therefore they were stronger than we. But rather, let us fight against them in the plain, and surely we will be stronger than they. Because our gods are the gods of the plains. Their gods, as long as they're in the mountains, we're not going to be able to beat them. Because their God is specifically what? The God of mountains. But our God, we got plain gods. Which isn't really like a compliment, like plain Anyway, so this is what they say in 24 and 25. Do this. Remove the kings, each from his place. Put captains in place. Muster an army like the army that you have lost. Horse for horse, chariot for chariot. Then we will fight against them in the plain, and surely we will be stronger than they. Not because of their might, but because of their God. Their God's going to be stronger than the God of Israel, and we're going to beat them, right? I don't need to tell you this, but what happens is later on, God proves to them that he's not just the God of the mountains, but he's also the God of the valleys. He's also the God of the plains. And they rout him again, and that's what happens. Okay? This is significant because this is the king of Aram. And our story today, over in 2 Kings chapter 5, if you would turn there. 2 Kings chapter 5, we're going to be reading about a guy named Naaman, not Haman, or even Blaman. But Naaman, he was the captain of the army of Aram. He's from that area. And you guys know the story. I'll give you a quick recap of what happened here. So, Naaman's a great valiant warrior, and he gets leprosy. You guys remember that? He gets leprosy. He's like, I don't know what to do. And so they captured an Israelite girl, and the Israelite girl says, hey, why don't you go see, there's a guy that can help you with that in the land of Israel. And so he's like, all right. So he talks to his king, and his king sends him with all this stuff to go to the king of Israel. And he gets to the king of Israel and says, hey, I need to be cured of leprosy. And the king gets really upset because he's like, am I God? Can I do that? Of course, the answer is no. So he finally works his way, finds Elisha, and he says, hey, Elisha, I'd like to be cured of my leprosy. Elisha says, okay, go wash 7 times in Jordan. And you guys know this, right? Where he gets really upset because he says, I got rivers that are way cleaner than what you guys got, you know. Does anybody know what the name of the river? I was going to put this on the Cahoots, but I didn't because, anyway. So he says, there are better rivers, and then he has some advisors give him like really good advice saying, if he had asked you to do some grand gesture, wouldn't you have done it? It's like, yeah, I would have. So why aren't you doing this thing? This is the way. So he's like, all right. So he does it. He goes out in the water, comes back up, gets cleansed of his leprosy. You guys remember that? Okay. So let's look down in verse 15. And this is where we're going to pick up. There's a lot of lessons, by the way, with all of that stuff. But verse 15, when he returned to the man of God with all his company and came and stood before him, he said, behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. So please take a present from your servant now. Did Naaman have other gods? Most likely. We know this because later on we're going to read about how he was a religious guy. He would burn offerings and things like that. But once he experienced the power of God, he now is convinced that the God of Israel, there's no one like him. Which is interesting to me because just a few years ago, the king of Aram got his rear end handed to him twice by the God of the mountains and the God of the plains. You remember that? And he's a captain in the army. Like, that stuff shouldn't have surprised him that the God of Israel was stronger than his gods. So he sits here and he says, okay, there's no God in all of Israel. Verse 16, but he said, as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will take nothing. Did I read that last little part? He goes, behold, there's no God in all the earth but in Israel. Verse 15, so please take a present from your servant now. That makes much more sense. But he said, as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will take nothing. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. Naaman said, if not, please let your servant at least be given 2 mules' load of earth, for your servant will no longer offer burnt offering, nor will he sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord. So what we're seeing here is that there is still superstition tied up in Naaman's understanding. Did he believe in the one true God? At this point he did. He knew that the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, is the one true God. And he wanted to honor that God. So he goes and he's asking for the dirt. What's the dirt for? It's to build an altar. okay? I mean, we see this. Like, you guys remember Elijah and the prophets? Remember that? They built up. Hey, Baal worshipers, why don't you guys build an altar? I'll build an altar, and then let's see what happens. But they build it up out of rocks and dirt and stuff like that. And so this guy, he wants to get that dirt from with the mules to bring back so that he can offer sacrifices to the one true God. Okay? Is that a good thing? I think it is. I think in his heart, he wants to do the right thing. Is there still superstition tied up with the dirt? Probably. But we'll see even more here in a little bit, okay? In verse 18, and this is where I want to get to the heart of this. It says, "In this matter, may the Lord pardon your servant. When my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. When I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon your servant in this matter." And in verse 19, Elijah says to him, "Go in peace." So he departed from him for some distance. So he's going to go back, and what you see here is that in his heart, he wants to serve the one true God, right? And in doing so, there are things that he's still going to have to do for the sake of who he is. He's a servant of the king of Aram. And as a part of that, because he's been chosen to be the guy that the king relies on, the king leans on, he's going to, in a physical sense, look like he's doing something that he's not supposed to be doing, right? And then when that happens, when he goes down and when he stands back up again, he's asking the Lord, forgive him, because this looks really, really bad. But in my heart, I don't believe that. I love this story because I remember some practical application here was when my dad died. I remember, so in Vietnamese culture, there's a lot of ancestor worshiping going on. And it's not like what you think, where you think that once your dad dies, he becomes some kind of god and you're worshiping a god. That's not what that means. That means that you honor and you celebrate them, and then you ask blessings from them. So when I was a kid, after my dad had died, my mom set up an altar, and so there was a little urn on a table, and there was a picture of my dad behind them, and so in that urn was rice, and then we would stick incense in there, and we would burn it. Occasionally, my mom would make up a really fancy meal, and she would set it over there, and she would have 5 bowls of rice, and the bowls of rice is for everyone in my family, 4 of us, and then one for my dad. And so they would burn the incense, and they would wait for the incense to burn down so that they could eat. And once the spirits ate, then we were allowed to go, and we were allowed to take it and eat ourselves. But I remember I had just started digging into Christianity at the time, and I remember thinking to myself, man, the practices that my family has is not effectual. It's nothing. Like when you die, you don't just kind of float around, protecting your loved ones. And that's not what happens. And I remember my mom told me, she gave me some incense one day, and she made my sister pray, she made me pray, and then she was going to make my younger brother pray. And I remember going up to the altar, I got the incense in my hand, and I was so nervous because I was like, man, what do I pray? Like if I pray, if I say anything to my dad, it's disingenuous, and I don't even believe that happens. And so I prayed to God, but at the same time, I was thinking to myself, this looks really, really bad. I wonder if my mom thinks that I'm going to pray. But if I don't do this, she's going to nag me to death. And Asian moms nagging you to death, you guys know. No, you don't. But it's rough, okay? So I remember thinking to myself, I'm still going to pray just so that she doesn't nag me, but I'm not going to pray. I'm not praying to my dad. I'm praying to the God of the Bible. And so all that happens, and then that's done. But if somebody else had caught wind of that, if they saw, like in the window, because we were doing it in our living rooms, one of my Christian friends walked by and they saw me doing that, wonder what would have happened. I wonder what they would have thought. I wonder if they would have said, man, Susan there, and he's, burning that incense to those gods, and, he's worshiping his dad and praying. Because what my mom wanted me to pray was pray that your dad would bless you, that he would protect you, that he would kind of guide you along and give you all the things that you need to be successful. And she was also superstitious in the sense that, did I tell you guys this about already? So my dad's dad died, and then 6 months after that, my dad's mom died. And then 6 months after that, my dad died. So 6 months after that, my mom's like, he's coming back for one of us. You know, I hope it's you, not me. But she really did think that the spirits were going to come and take one of us. How powerful is that in your mind, that you're scared because these numbers, these coincidences happening, and you're like, dude, one of you guys is next. So my mom made the four of us sleep in one bedroom. Me and my brother had two twin-size mattresses in our room, and my mom slept on this one. I think my sister slept on this one, and me and my brother slept on the floor in the middle of the room for months because they thought that somebody was going to come back and get us. Good news, I'm here, and they didn't get me. But turn with me over to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We're going to start in verse 24. And this is the idea that I hope to leave with you guys. It's let no one seek his own good, but that of his neighbor. Okay? So always having the mindset of what can I do that's best for my neighbor? Which you guys can look around and you can see that applies to those in the church. That applies to those who actually live next to us. And then in verse 25 he says this: eat anything that is sold in the meat market without asking questions for conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord's and all it contains. For if one of the unbelievers invites you and you want to go, eat anything that is set before you without asking questions for conscience sake. But if anyone says to you, this is meat sacrificed to idols, do not eat it for the sake of the one who informed you and for conscience sake. I mean, not your own conscience, but the other man's. For why is my freedom judged by another man's conscience? If I partake with thankfulness, why am I slandered concerning that for which I give thanks? And then verse 31, whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. So back in Roanoke, I started attending assembly with a bunch of Vietnamese folks because I wanted to practice on my language. And around New Year's time, around the end of January, early February, it was so enlightening because these verses to us, you know, we read it, we're like, okay, just don't hurt anybody's feelings, and you know, to the pure, all things are pure. So if it's set before you, you can eat it, right? And you guys remember my rule: if somebody puts food before me, I'm going to eat it. Somebody who puts drinks before me, I'm going to drink it. Well, I mean, within reason, of course. I'm not crazy, but I eat it in a good, clear conscience. You know, like. Maybe not cottage cheese or something like that, but pretty much everything else other than that. So what happens during New Year's is that there's a lot of celebrations where the food that is prepared has been offered to idols or spirits beforehand. Like that's Vietnamese culture. And so the celebrations during New Year's is always, you want to go and visit as many people. I remember as a kid, you want to visit as many people as you can. From a kid's perspective, because the more people that you visit, the more presents that you get. And they always give you these little red envelopes, you know, lucky money. And so you want to visit the rich friends, because the poor friends, they're going to give you like quarters and nickels and stuff, you know. You want to visit the rich friends that are giving out like $5 bills or $20 bills. If you have good grandparents, they're the ones that normally slip into 100, and you want to always make sure you visit them. But you visit all these different people, and every place that you visit, they're going to give you something to eat. So, you know, before Christ, that's normal. That's culture. That's acceptable, and everyone does it, and it's great. But once people started becoming, you know, getting out of that and honoring and serving the Lord, these Vietnamese people, they were in a dilemma. They would ask the teacher, they said, what do I do? when I go here, I know that food has been offered. And if I eat that food, what I'm saying is I'm sharing in the cup of demons. Do I just not eat? Do I make it awkward? What do I do in this case? And the Bible teacher was really wise. You know, he turned to this passage and he says, if they set it before you, you eat it. You don't raise questions. But if you start saying, hey, was this sacrifice to Uncle Charlie? You know, then you're gonna start running into issues. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is this. When you first become a Christian, these things really do, there's a lot of things that start troubling you because it's different than the culture that you were raised up in, you know? Like, is celebrating New Year's a big deal? Anybody? I like it, you know, but to some it might be a stumbling block because what you associate with New Year's is only the drinking, the carousing, and all that stuff. Things like Halloween and Christmases, and so they start asking questions. Can I do this or can I do that? Or sometimes they don't even ask the questions; they just do it, and you know, not even realizing that it's a big deal. And Paul is saying the principle is that as we watch folks grow, and we got a big influx of new people. You know, it's so encouraging to see folks, even from different cultures, come and, you know, they want to honor and serve the Lord and they want to do the best they can. But they're still doing things that some of us might look on and say, you know, as a Christian, you don't do those kind of things. And so, as I was going through this, I was thinking to myself, a word of encouragement that I want to share with you guys is that in our encouragement to folks learning new things, that a healthy measure of grace is in order. And as people are learning to do things, you know, the best example that I can think of is this is in Acts, you know, with Apollos. Apollos, he wanted to do the right thing. Was he a Christian? No, he wasn't. Did he become a Christian? Absolutely. How did that happen? Well, that came through Aquila and Priscilla. Hearing him, watching him, and as they're seeing this, they explained the way of God to him better, right? And that's a good thing. I can only imagine, and the Bible doesn't say, but I can only imagine that the way that they approached that was a graceful way. And so when we're looking at what we do here, Paul's words in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 24, says, let no one seek his own good, but that of his neighbor. So you guys remember going back to Naaman, and he's getting that pile of dirt, you know, and taking it back. And he's going to build an altar. You know, Elisha could have stopped and said, what do you think? What do you think you're doing? There's only one altar. It's in the temple, brother. You know, what are you doing? You're going to go sacrifice? Do you think God's going to honor that? Are you crazy? That's not exactly what happened. You know, he led him, and the guy went off, and he did that. And I think that there are good ways and bad ways of trying to get people caught up. And so sometimes when people go off and do those kind of things, like what Naaman did, I think honestly they're trying to do the best that they can. And when we look at that, there's two parts to this lesson, and I'm not going to get into the next one until next week because I thought that I only had 30 minutes. But next week we'll actually look at Hezekiah's story and finish out this whole thought. But the first part of this is you do the best that you can. And in doing so, we should encourage those who are doing the very best that they can, you know? The ones who are might not get everything right, but they really are trying their very best to do that. Let's not be too hard on them. Let's give them a measure of grace and encourage them. Is there a correction that needs to happen? Yeah, that's why we pray for wisdom and the best way to handle things. But shutting people down and being harsh is not the way to go.